social experiment results of 2019. That these are the calculated percentages after we did another social media with the public here in Philadelphia. That was part of the research for the natural law documentary. So this was part of what we did in doing man on the street interviews for the Mark Passio and the Science of Natural Law documentary film that we are working on. And it is an admittedly, I'll first state that it is an admittedly relatively small data set that we took from. And that is not the point, folks. The point is not how small a total figure of people that the data set was, because it was this time it was under 50 people. That's a small data set to work from. However, I would contend, and I feel that my contention would be absolutely backed up by more larger data sets, and I will challenge the viewing audience here today with the same challenge that I challenged everyone that I presented these conclusions, these results to at the Teaching Natural Law workshop. I will give you the same challenge today that I gave the attendees of my Teaching Natural Law workshop, and that is repeat this social experiment with as many people as you like in whatever city you like, or even do a cross-section of multiple cities with hundreds or thousands of people. It will not matter. The results will come back not statistically different, not statistically significantly different, I should say. And I'm talking about, when we're talking about this, we're not talking about 1 or 2 percentage points. You will not get a factor of like 10 to 20 percentage points difference. It will not sway things beyond what I am going to call in this presenting of our results, the magic number. Because the magic number to sway social dynamics such as these is, and I've said it many times and will continue to say it, because people have been brainwashed by New Age bullshit to believe that you only need to sway numbers like this 1 or 2%, and it's a crock of shit. The magic number is 51%. That is where you will start to see the beginnings of the tide turning. You won't see the result. You will see the beginnings of the tide turning. I will tell you, you will see in big ways social upheaval, change, and betterment toward the positive when we pass 75% of people thinking the correct way. That's when I will say you'll see a massive upheaval of social change. You will see hardly any until we hit 51% of change. No one else will tell you those numbers. You know how many people in this whole movement will tell you numbers like that? A big fucking goose egg. A big nothing burger. They'll all stick to this New Age bullshit aphorism that you only need to change 1 or 2% or 3% of the population. That's all you'd need to change. It's bullshit, folks. It's bullshit. Okay? We're a little off center with that, but I get the point. This may be the rage cam. We're going to call that the rage cam in the future. That's going to be when I really go off on a rant and get really, really angry. We'll call that we'll zoom in like that, and it will be the what on earth is happening rage cam. Okay? I like the idea. Okay? But anyway, back to the social experiment results. Admittedly small sample set. I challenge you to do it with a wider sample set. You will not get any statistically significantly different results. Prove me wrong. Go out and do it yourself with a wider number, a wider data set, and prove me wrong. I don't care what city, I don't care. It wouldn't matter where you do it, because people are all brainwashed in the same dark occult way. They are brainwashed into the same cult belief systems. So from now till the end of the show, I'm going to go through these social experiment results that were the result of our man on the street interviews as part of the natural law documentary data set. And this is my contention for where is humanity at in consciousness in late 2019. These results I'll disclose this experiment was performed in the spring of 2019. One season was performed in mid to late spring. One season, full season, has passed. It will not be statistically different now had we done the same thing here in Philadelphia in late 2019. Okay, so let's go. 95% of our interviewees could not correctly define the word occult. And here's the pie chart. I did a few 3D pie charts for this. Hopefully they're going to transition real nicely between them. I tried to set that up in my keynote document here, my presentation document. And I'm showing you the split visually on a pie chart that represents 100% of interviewees. So what we're considering the brainwashed answers or incorrect answers are going to be in red, and what we consider answers we would have accepted as correct and representing truth are in green on these charts. So look at the result. And let me tell you something, folks. This is overwhelmingly beyond what I expected. I didn't expect to get 5%. It's still a terrible result. And I would say it's still probably somewhat representative of what we would get globally on any data set. But I'm almost even slightly impressed that 5% of the people we asked in Philadelphia here did understand that the word occult means hidden. Maybe they were occultists themselves. But 95% of people thought the occult meant evil, voodoo, Ouija boards, spiritual hokum, religion. You got a million different answers. Most were evil or bad or taboo. But only 5% out of everyone interviewed knew that the word occult meant hidden. So, extend this beyond the city of Philadelphia. Would you say that's probably the percentage you'd get worldwide? I'd almost be shocked if it were that good. I'd say we're probably less than 1% or 2% worldwide if people throughout the world knew that the word occult actually meant hidden. I'm going to tell you, folks, and this is going to be a shock to some people. And some people will vehemently disagree with this. I'll get a lot of blowback for saying this, okay? I'm going to tell you right now that we received, in doing this in the city of Philadelphia, better results than we would get most other places in the world, because I believe and feel and have a pretty good understanding of the consciousness that even with the kind of brainwashing politically that is out there in the world, and particularly in America, even doing this here in Philadelphia, there is at least enough consciousness present here that we would get better results here in the city where I'm from than most other places in the world. So I would say if these results will be skewed, they will be skewed toward the negative if you pull it out further or do it in other places. Once again, prove me wrong. Do it yourself. And then bring the results to me. And if your results are very significantly different statistically, I'll admit that I was wrong and there are some other places with better consciousness. So let's move on to the next question. 95% of interviewees could not correctly define the term natural law. When we asked them, what do you think the term natural law means? We only got 5% of people that actually knew that this is the laws of the universe and it's like karma. They didn't give a super extended definition. They basically said these are God's laws or the laws of the universe. They give us the result of what we do, and it's similar to karma, what people traditionally think of as karma or karmic law. Only 5% of people could identify and define that as natural law. 95% either had wildly off-base answers or could not define it and said, I have no idea what that term means. This is where we're at in society, folks. And once again, I think that's a very skewed number toward the positive. If we extended this worldwide, if you got 1%, once again, I would practically shit my pants with joy in those who could actually define it. Okay? And I'm not saying that to discourage people. I'm saying that because what part of what I'm doing here is showing you what our work is. I am showing you where we're at in consciousness, and I'm showing you what our work is. Not my work, what our work as people who claim to understand this is to do. Okay? Moving forward. Okay, I see that transition looks good. 68% of interviewees believe that morality is a subjective human construct. Now, this is one of the most important results because this tells us why our society is the way that it is. And again, folks, people are like, I just want to say before I even get into this, you see what I do here to try to make this hit home, right? I don't just slap whatever together. I try to make it somewhat aesthetic. I try to make it somewhat visually appealing. I try to make you understand what it is that this information represents. I learned the software enough to do some basic nice things with it, right? To make it really hit home in the mind so that you understand what it is I'm really saying and what it visually represents in humanity. This is part of what the great work is to do. You have to learn how to do things like this. It isn't that hard. It's not as hard as you think it is. I don't want to dissuade and discourage people. But this also doesn't happen magically. Again, I joke about, the presentation fairies don't arrive at my house on Saturday morning and go, Mark, we're going to make your Sunday presentation for you now. I give up my weekend to do this. I give up my time to do this work. My producers give up my time. My, assistants give up their time. We give up of our time freely to do this, to get it out there to people. That's what it takes. It's sacrifice. It takes a work ethic to do this. Okay? It's not by magic. It's not just the pressing of a button, and it's done. Or the presentation fairies arrive and go, hey, you need that presentation made? Well, we got it for you already prepared. It's a day or often days of work that I have to give up of other things I want to do. And by the way, that extended shot looks really cool. I didn't even tell my producer to do that today. He took the initiative, and when I saw him starting to set it up, I gave him the go-ahead to go ahead with it. Just let's see how it looks. That was on the fly. And that's made possible by the wonderful donation of the new camera that we received by a donor. Once again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. So going back to the data, this is probably one of the most important results that we got as part of the entire data set. And folks, it's atrocious. You should be so appalled, you should practically be in tears at how atrocious this result is. This means that over 2/3 of people in our society are moral relativists. Over 2/3. The last time we did this was part of the natural law extended seminar that I gave in Philadelphia, and we were at about 66%, which is 2/3. Now we're beyond that. It has grown by almost 2 percentage points. 68% of our society is moral relativist. That's over 2 out of 3 people. And we want to know why we're enslaved? You need only look at this one slide, and this is 100% proof of the reason, the underlying causal factor for human enslavement right there. That's the answer. It's atrocious. This is horrifying. Only 32% said actual morality is objective. There's an objective difference between right behavior and wrong behavior that exists objectively in nature. 68% said morality is subjective. It is a human construct that human beings invent the difference between right behavior and wrong behavior, and we get to choose the difference between them. And we want to know why we're enslaved. My God. God help us is all I have to say about that result. God help us. It's sickening. The next result. A full 32% of interviewees do not think human beings have free will, and this number is growing. The last time we did that, we got, I think it was like 80 to 90%, 80%. A full 1 in 3 people now believe there is no such thing as free will, folks. I mean, thankfully, luckily, we're in at least the 68th percentile here with how many people believe that we still do have free will. That's good, right? But think about the negative result here. 1 in 3 people now don't think humans have free will. This number is growing. The red part of this pie chart is growing. More and more people are now believing we don't have free will. Can you imagine this? But we're in so much trouble, folks. We're in so much trouble. This is part of why I do need to take the hiatus from the live show and really belt out this documentary and get it out there to the world. The world needs it. There's nobody else making a documentary on natural law. I will almost certainly be the first. I need to focus on that work and get it done. Because the situation is bad. And if you can't see that, as people who say you want to put this knowledge out to other people, you need to help. You need to get involved and help. I'm begging you. I am not so proud that I am beyond begging for help. Okay? I am begging for your assistance in the great work. You need to learn the technology to do it. So, consider that result. It's atrocious. Next. 0% of interviewees could correctly define what a right is. No one who was asked. 100% of people asked could not correctly define the definition of a right. No one who was asked could give back to us a right is a behavior that does not cause harm to others. No one. 0. And if you don't understand that is the exact reason that we are losing our rights, once again, I don't know what to tell you. You don't understand what's taking place in our midst. You don't understand the crux and causal factor of the problem. And again, if you're not producing media that shows this and that helps to make this better, you're not doing the great work. You may think you are, but you are not. Again, sickening to the pit of my stomach, but not unexpected. Next result. 79% of interviewees believe that rights come from human beings. This is, even more than moral relativism, than they're subjective. 21% said rights come from God or nature. That's like, 2 out of 10. 2 out of 10. So really 80% believe that they're subjective, because if they come from human beings, they're based on human perception and opinion. They can't come from nature if human beings get to determine what they are. So this is actually a better statistically correct result of our rights subjective. 8 out of 10 people, just think about that number. 8 out of 10 people think that humans are the arbiters of rights. 8 out of 10 think that we make what rights are, and therefore they think we can revoke rights. We can endow them to others. We can grant them to other people, delegate them, and if necessary, revoke them from others because they come from us. Imagine this. And I would tell you that number is very significant in the anarchist community, in the freedom movement as well. I would hope it diverges somewhat from that, but I wouldn't really put my hopes up on it, you know? Because every time I put my hopes in people, I'm always let down by where we're at. You know, and I'm really not afraid to show that it affects me. I'm also not afraid to ask for help. I'm okay with saying I've done this for a long time now, and I'm under stress as a result of not having enough help doing it. I need you to step forward and start teaching this stuff. The reason we're still here at this place, you know, the reason that, you know, we still have this going on here is because not enough people are teaching natural law. So let's move on to the next slide. 53% of interviewees believe some human beings have rights that others do not. So we were closer to a half and half split on this, but you'll notice, as with all of these slides, okay, with the exception of only a couple, you will notice that we are in the complete red and in the wrong side of thinking with well over 51%, the magic number. You will notice this. Please take note of this. Things will not start to change in any way until we move past 51% in green of being the correct answer, okay? With all of these experiment questions. You won't even start the process, let alone get to a point where it's truly tipping and really all of society is embracing it, until you hit around 75%, 3/4. But that 51%, the point where it breaks half and half, is the magic number. That is why it is the magic number of the occult. May 1st, 5/1, Area 51, May Day, critical point. It's their highest occult holiday of the year, and it's not by accident that they chose 5/1. They know that's also the tipping point. But 53% still believe some human beings have rights that others don't. Only 47% said, yes, all human beings have the same rights as every other human being, and no one has special rights that we can grant to them that others don't have. But 53% still said, yes, some human beings have rights that others don't, that are granted to them by other human beings. Could you believe this? So we're still in the significant red on that. 74% of interviewees believe governmental authority exists inherently in nature. Think about that. It's like the same breakdown in the wrong way that believe rights come from human beings versus come from nature. 74% believe authority is inherent to nature. And only 26%, or about a quarter, 1 in 4, believe that authority is a human belief. That is a constructural idea of human beings. It's the exact opposite of the way it should be. Think about this for a moment, though, folks. I really want you to consider what this means. This means 3 out of 4 people believe government is totally natural and exists from the natural world, stems from the natural world, and is not a human constructural idea that humanity believes exists. They believe it's an actual natural thing in nature, in the cosmos. They believe authority is something that actually exists in the natural world, in the cosmos. The level of religious brainwashing is so off the charts. How much people are a fucking cult, are cult members. It's insane. Only 1 in 4 people believe that there is a belief in authority, and that's all it is. We want people to abandon the belief in authority. 3 out of 4 people fucking believe that it exists in nature and it's not even a belief. This is where we're at in consciousness in late 2019, folks. Do you see how much you have failed in what your work is to do? You have failed. I have not. Look, long term, okay, one person, if you want to put all of this on one person, can I change the totality of human beings' consciousness? More likely than not, no. No one individual is powerful enough. So, but have I done my portion of the work? I haven't failed in my obligation to the work. You have. Once again, if I'm talking to a person who has actually done it and really contributed their portion of the work, please disregard. I'm not speaking to you. But I'm probably speaking to 98% of my viewing audience. You have failed in your duty and responsibility. And that is why this is still the statistic of what people think. Take a good long look at these slides, ladies and gentlemen. Take a good long look at them and know what they mean. Understand deeply in your mind and your heart what they mean. Next, 69% of interviewees believe that governmental authority is morally legitimate. So we're at a 7-3 breakdown here. 7 out of 10 believe government authority is perfectly morally legitimate. And only about 3 out of 10, and you would say, oh, that's great. It's over 30% of people who would claim that they're like anarchists, that think, authority isn't really morally legitimate. I can't believe how much this differs psychologically and is cognitive dissonance. Almost 8 out of 10 said they believe it exists in nature. Well, what is nature immoral? We have a 10% discrepancy there because people are under a lot of cognitive dissonance and one belief contradicts another and yet they hold them simultaneously. So 7 out of 10 people believe government authority is perfectly morally legitimate and there's no moral issue with it, meaning that it is right for government to rule over other people arbitrarily with their arbitrarily defined sets of laws that are based on moral relativism and the belief of human beings. And only about 3 out of 10 said, no, government authority is a claim and it is an immoral claim, that it doesn't really have any moral legitimacy to it. The next result. 64% of interviewees believe government is necessary to prevent chaos. So we're back at an almost 2/3 to 1/3 ratio. 2 out of every 3 human beings believe that without government, there would be chaos in society. And this is growing again. This is a figure that is growing since the last time we did these social experiments. So more people are brainwashed to believe that without the control system of slavery in place, that there would just be human chaos. And they don't understand that with a society of slavery in place, we have human chaos. They don't think slavery is chaos. You have imbeciles going on interviews trying to tell people, in the Hong Kong protests that, why are you so concerned with freedom? Safety is more important than freedom. No, imbecile, it is not. Freedom is and always will be more important than physical safety. You're a coward and a know-nothing. That's what people who think like that are, who think that it's more important to be safe, no matter how much control or rights you have to, control you need to be under or rights you need to give up, rather than be free and potentially be in a very life-threatening, dangerous situation. You're just fucking wrong, dumbass. That's my response to anyone who thinks that way. You're factually incorrect, and more importantly, you're fucking morally wrong. Because you are one of the imbeciles that would be willing to sacrifice other people's freedoms just so you feel safe. even though you'd be enslaving everyone as a result. Slavery never creates freedom. It creates chaos. And that's what you have now. Okay? So folks, almost 2/3, about 2 out of 3 people think we have to have slavery in order to prevent chaos. And only about 1/3 have enough faith in humanity to say there shouldn't be rulers. Even if we didn't have rulers, we would end up being okay. See, the people who think the other way think, oh, people are bad, and if, we didn't have government, there'd be chaos. Well, how could you appoint bad people? The government is comprised of people who you're saying are bad and will create chaos. Well, how won't the appointed government create chaos? And the answer is, not only will they have. That's why none are fit to rule. Humanity is no group of angels. Believe me, we are not angelic beings, folks. We are not godlike beings by any stretch of anybody's imagination, least of all myself. That is why no one is fit to rule anyone else. That's why no form of government is legitimate. And it's a mistake to implement any of it. So, we're still at a 2/3, 1/3 breakdown toward the wrong there. 78% of interviewees believe taxation by government is morally legitimate. We go even more into the deep red, with almost 8 out of 10 saying, yes, it's perfectly moral for government to institute taxation because I want that stolen money used for things I want it used for. As long as it's stolen and put to work in the name of the things I want it put toward, then it's perfectly moral. And the people who think that, you're immoral bags of shit. That's what you are. You're immoral bags of shit. And you would say we're going to talk about another statistic. You'd claim you're moral. And you're lying sacks of shit on top of being immoral sacks of shit. And this is where we give people too much of a wide berth, man. We give them too much of a berth and we want to say, oh, they're just good. They're good people. They're just mistaken or they're just misled. No, they're bad people. I need to do a whole presentation like Streetwise Spirituality of what is the actual point-by-point characteristics of the definition of being awake. I really need to do a whole presentation at some point in the future called what does it mean to actually be a good person? Because we throw this term around way too flippantly. We throw it around willy-nilly like, oh, he's a good person, but he just is mistaken on this. No, it's not. It doesn't mean you're a good person. Wrong, incorrect. There are a lot more characteristics that it means to be a good person. And that is knowing the difference between right and wrong behavior. And willfully choosing the right over the wrong, which is the true exercise of conscience. Conscience is the knowledge that has to come first. And then the willful choice of the good over the bad is a free will decision that comes next, that implements it into the physical domain. People who think this way aren't morally good people that are just misled. They're bad people who have yet to abandon their wrong and bad thoughts and become good people by abandoning those bad thoughts and choosing correct knowledge and then implementing it. That's what makes you a good person. You can go from being a bad person to being a good person in a human lifetime, but while you think and behave a certain way and condone certain things, that is the definition of being a bad person. Actively. And too few understand that. But think about what this means, folks. Think about what this actual statistical result means here. 8 out of 10 people believe that robbery is perfectly acceptable as long as a perceived authority figure does the robbery. And as long as they have, quote, representatives who use those stolen resources, which amounts to actual slavery, taking any portion of the result of someone else's labor that they do with their own body. So it's really a claim of ownership upon the body of someone else, which is slavery. As long as their, quote, representatives do what they say they are going to do, and that they condone being done with that money, then it's perfectly moral. So a wrong can be turned into a right as long as you use the stolen goods or resources, what you say you're going to use it for, that they want. And you think that those are just good people who are misled? That's a huge part of the definition of what it means to be a bad person. So that's a better statistically significant result of how many people are actually morally good people. I'd say it's far less than that. But I'd start maybe at a number of around 8 out of 10 are bad people. I really wouldn't even give you that. I'd say it's closer to 9 out of 10. Next result. 78% of interviewees believe taxation is necessary for society to function. The same result that said that it was moral, said that they believe it is necessary. And around 22%, or about 2 out of 10, said our society could function without stolen labor, the stolen product of other people's labor. Only 2 out of 10 think everything that we do in society we could continue and survive and thrive as a society without robbing people. 8 out of 10 basically believe, no, the robbery of people and the continued theft of the fruits of their labor must continue for society to function at all. This is how brainwashed the population is. And again, these numbers are getting worse and worse, folks. They're not going in the direction where the correct answer, is getting larger as time goes on. They're going in the opposite direction. The correct answers are disappearing. They're getting smaller and smaller. The pie chart, the green section, is getting smaller as time goes on. "63% of interviewees believe drug laws are morally legitimate and necessary." Both perfectly moral and necessary. Imagine, 63% of slaves believe that the owners of themselves as slaves have the perfect moral right to continue to make the claim of ownership upon the body of themselves as slaves by commanding what may or may not be put into the body of said slaves. Final report at 11. Can you believe it? Almost 2/3 of human beings, 2 out of 3 human beings say my body belongs to someone else. Someone else may determine what I may put into my own physical vessel, my body, that my consciousness inhabits. 2/3 of people physically identify with their slave owner's right to turn them into a slave. They believe that they have the moral right to do that. This is how bad things are. And 37%, very slightly more than 1 in 3, say drug laws are immoral and unnecessary. That someone has the right to put in their body that which they choose because they own their body. And you know what? I'd say out of that 63%, how many people there would you say are feminists who believe in abortion? I'd say a good chunk of them. If you said, are you a feminist? Yes. If you say, do you believe abortion is a right? They'd say absolutely, because women have the right to do what they want with their own body. Yet they would say other people have a right to say what I can and can't put into my own body. That's the cognitive dissonance. And I don't think abortion is a right because it's harming another being. It's not the same being. It's a different being. And I've shown what the result of abortion is. It's doing something that is a life that you are in the charge of, that you are the steward of. It doesn't mean you can do whatever you want to your own children if it means harming them. So, but that's for another time. We don't have the time to get into that. We have 7 minutes left, so I really have to race through these. Less than that, really. So let's move on to the next slide. 71% of interviewees believe driver's licenses are morally legitimate and necessary. So again, we have a 7-3 breakdown. 7 out of 10 say our controllers should have to license our travel, and we do not have the actual right to travel in a car, a boat, or anything else. And though their argument invariably when we asked them was there'd be chaos without this piece of paper. People would drive like maniacs. Well, people don't drive like maniacs now. Like the paper actually proves you won't get out on the road and do something that is both destructive to others and or self-destructive. The piece of paper proves nothing. It proves you knew how to jump through a hoop to some person that says you must have this or we'll lock you up if you don't. That's all the piece of paper proves. That's not saying anything about what your subsequent behavior will be. You think just because people have a license, that means that they will drive in a perfectly not honorable but trustworthy way on the road? Or a responsible way? That magical document somehow imparts responsible behavior? Does the ability to drink impart responsible behavior? Does a license to go and buy a firearm impart responsible behavior with the firearm? Does any licensure impart responsible behavior? No, it does not. You're talking about two separate things. You're talking about licensure versus responsibility through action, which are two separate things. So it doesn't make sense on its face, and it still shows that 7 out of 10 people believe that human beings don't actually have the right inherently to travel in nature. They think we need to beg permission of a government for that. This was only one of the slightly encouraging results, which is over the 51% magic number in the right. We asked people if people have a moral obligation to obey unjust laws. Meaning if a law commands something that is either wrong or prevents something that you can do that doesn't cause harm, are you still morally obligated to follow it unless you could somehow get it changed? And 43%, which is still a horrifying number, said you still have a moral duty to obey it unless you could get it changed through a legal process. And 57% said no such duty exists to obey what are considered unjust or immoral laws. So that was a somewhat encouraging result. But again, it doesn't jibe with all of the results that they gave about government being moral. Okay? So I'm going to try to finish these and move quickly forward. So again, just over that magic number, 51%, okay? 52% said following orders is not a virtuous human trait. 48% of interviewees believe following orders is a virtuous human trait. And, I would say we're right around that 50 percentile mark. So it's not going to swing significantly in either direction. But it's horrifying that about 50% of people think following orders is a virtue. And only about 50% think it's not a virtue. 64% believe an order giver is more culpable than an order follower. 100% wrong. So that's almost 2/3. 2 out of 3. Again, you see this number come up over and over. About 2/3 are in the wrong. They think an order giver is more responsible for the resultant harm than someone who actually performed the harmful behavior through their actual actions. The order follower. 74% of interviewees do not think firearms ownership is a human right. I think maybe one of the only places you'll get a statistically different result of that is Texas. 3 out of 4 don't believe it's a natural right to own a firearm. And that's getting worse and worse. Only 1 in 4 think that is a natural right. And here's the big one, folks. All people we asked think that they are a moral individual. Everyone we asked, with all the things that they concluded, that they said that were completely immoral and backing of the authority of government, they actually believe that they are still a good person.